Okay, what's up guys? Welcome back to Money So Tasty. Let's all get a taste of capital. Today we'll answer the most frequently asked questions relating to CFA. And one is, what kind of jobs will I be doing? We'll look at the CFA charter holders. What are they doing in the industry? What are some of the trends we're seeing right now? Number two, where should I go for those jobs? That includes what kind of type of industries, what kind of companies, and what kind of geographic zones. Should I stay in North America? Should I go to Europe? Or should I go to Asia Pacific or China? What kind of different career path? And where would I see most career growth, promotions, and better compensation in general? At the end of this video, we'll also review to you how much are CFA charter holders making, right? This is by far the most commonly asked question. Am I going to make a lot of money? How much exactly am I going to make? We'll also review, are you going to receive a better compensation at larger firms or at smaller firms? And that can help you decide when next time you go for an interview or go selecting the firms you want to be joining. Okay, so this report is from a 2019 CFA Institute compensation study. In this report, we have 15,000 respondents, almost roughly about 15,000 respondents. So we know CFA charter holders in the world right now, it's probably a little bit more than 150,000. And so if you look at the past number of years, past 10 years, for example, the number of CFA charter holders probably increased about 40,000 to 50,000. So it's quite a significant increase. But overall, as a percentage of all the people in the finance industry, the CFA charter holder is still a very, very small percentage. So it's still very valuable. In our last episode, we talked about out of 200 people who want to become CFA charter holders, how many will actually become CFA charter holders. So go check it out if you haven't got a chance. It's quite interesting. So now let's delve into this report. So in this, people are coming from 129 markets, and they separate them by zones. They basically separate them into Americas, which is mostly North America, as we'll learn later on, mostly US and Canada. Asia Pacific, 15% of the respondents, mostly China. EMEA, they call it Europe, Middle East, and Africa, about 24%, mostly Europe, especially UK and Switzerland. So the top 5 countries, US, Canada, UK, United Kingdom, China, and Switzerland, have about 70% of the respondents. So more than 2/3. A lot of people are coming from those top 5 countries. So just bear that in mind. Asia Pacific, mostly China. Americas, mostly North America, by US and Canada, and Europe, Middle East, and Africa, mostly Europe and specifically UK and Switzerland. Now let's delve into this report. Now, so first things many people ask is, what kind of jobs will I be doing once I become CFA charter holders? So now they rank them by the percentage people that participate in each of those job functions. Portfolio management, so getting understanding about a portfolio, understanding an investment portfolio, and manage that investment portfolio. So a typical title might be associate portfolio manager, research portfolio manager, assistant portfolio manager, or portfolio managers and senior portfolio managers. So that's the biggest by far, 25%. Research, so that goes into buy-side research and sell-side research together, 12%, consulting 10%, risk analysis about 7%, investment strategy about 7%. So the top 5 occupied about over 60% of the respondents. So those are by far the top 5 job functions. Okay, now let's take a look at the portfolio management function, which is, as you can see, is the largest function by far. 3,688 people participated in the survey for portfolio management alone. So let's look at what are those people managing the portfolio about. 25%, the biggest, is equities, which makes sense. 20% followed by fixed income. So those two combined is almost half. And then it's 19% from multi-asset class, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. It's basically combining all different asset classes together to make sure the portfolio is quite stable over the long run. So that includes equities, fixed income, alternative investments, private equities, etc., etc. And 11% is, take a look, individual and trust accounts. So managing for those high net worth people, family offices, and trust accounts. Managers of managers, 7%. So those are kind of similar to fund of funds. Those portfolio managers will basically pick other funds or portfolio managers for you. 6% private equity, 12% other. Now let's take a look at the second most frequently used job function, which is research, right? 1,800 people, over 1,800 people participated in this. Most of it's from buy side, 76%. Buy side means they have the money, right? They have the capital, usually pension funds, mutual funds, could be a hedge fund, any type of capital management firms. Sell side, typically like a banks or institution that service the buy side. In the past, they usually do this to generate trading revenues. They want you to trade certain stocks or fixed income. But now we're going to see later on, this trend is going to be, we're seeing a trend that the sell side is less and less over time. And we're going to explain why a little bit later on from a few of the trends going on in the industry. And so we would expect sell side research to continue to decline in the future. Okay, now let's talk about the industry type. So we talk about the job functions. What kind of industry would CFA charter holders go into? Asset management all the way to the other industries. So the top four would be asset management, private wealth, commercial bank, investment bank. They occupy about 66%. So 2/3 just in those four industries. So pretty concentrated for the first top four. And then you move into consulting, some insurance, some other assets. Now let's take a look at this left chart. So they basically delve into asset management and they sort those by the companies you work for and their assets under management. So basically large firms usually have more assets under management. So 100 billion or more are considered very, very large firms. They occupy about 30% of the respondents, which makes sense, right? Bigger firms, they usually hire more people to cover certain industries, certain sectors, certain asset classes. And then you have smaller firms, pretty evenly distributed all the way from 50 billion to 100 billion down to less than 500 million. Okay, next let's talk about how long would the people work in this industry. So we have 0 to 5 years, 5 years to 10 years, 10 to 20 years, 20 years or more. And then it's sorted by Americas, Asia Pacific, and EMEA. So it sort of looks like normal distribution, right? Almost, with the middle have more population and less population from each side. So only 10% for 0 to 5 years. Why is that? Because remember, CFA, to become a CFA charter holder, it requires a work experience of 4 years. So when you are a CFA charter holder, you already have 4 years of work experience in this industry. So very soon you're going to become this 5 to 10 years category. And next, this is where we get to more information about each zones. So is it better to work in Americas? Is it better to work in Asia Pacific or EMEA? So overall, bear in mind, most of the respondents are from Americas, as we can see from the earlier pie charts. So this structure makes sense, but where it gets more interesting is in the 20 years or more category. You see way more from Americas and way less from Asia Pacific, because Asia Pacific, remember, it's about 15-20%, something like that. And this category, it's only 7%. So what does that tell about us? So there are certain things we can infer about these. So maybe it's because it's way more challenging working in Asia, the stress, the pressure is higher, so people tend to stay less. People tend not to go past the 20 years. They might move into a different industry or they might retire early. So that's one possibility. Another possibility, as we can see later on, is Asia is more like a pyramid structure, whereas you get way less people when you move to higher positions like senior management, etc. So there are not many titles or positions are available for you to move into past the 20 years. So not many people are in the 20 years categories. which we'll see in a second. So now we look at seniority by regions. So this is by the title you hold. All right, so from entry level to intermediate. Entry level, they give a definition, I think is 0 to 3 years. Intermediate is about 3 to 5 years, and then it goes to senior professional management, senior management, executive, and senior executive. And this is where you have the CIO, CEO, COO, CFO, etc. So breaking down into Americas, Asia Pacific, and EMEA. So first, Americas, it's kind of like normal distribution, right? If you look at it, it sort of gives you that bell structure, which gives you this possibility of moving up, right? If you look at management and everything above, so basically looking at those 4 bars together, it's about 54% of people. So you see it's relatively easy moving to management and management above. You have over half the people that have a management or anything higher. But in Asia Pacific, you see a much different structure, right? If you look at this, if this bar becomes shorter, and this forms a perfect pyramid. If you just turn it 90 degrees to the left or counterclockwise, you see basically a pyramid. And it's way less people at the top. So from management, those 4 bars to the right, instead of we have here 54%, here it's only roughly about 30%. So it's relatively harder to move up in Asia Pacific. EMEA is basically somewhere in between of those 2 zones. So now it gives you an idea. Do you want to stay in North America? Do you want to go to EMEA? Do you want to go to Asia Pacific? It gives you some of those insights, which I find quite interesting. Now, finally, we move into salaries or total compensation. Now, in this episode, we're just going to delve super shallow, just into the median total compensation. In our next episode, we're going to delve deeper. We're going to look at different zones. Are they going to be paid higher or lower? Different seniorities. Are there going to be base income or base salaries, or is it going to be variable pay? What about the top 10%? Because this is only look at median. Next time we'll look at top 10%, top 20%, etc. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe to this channel. In our next episode, we'll talk more about everything about compensation and other insights generated from this CFA compensation report. And also, it lets you to know about certain things about this CFA industry, what you can expect when you become a CFA charter. It's good to know before you start, or at least as soon as you start taking those exams. It's good to know what you have ahead of time. Okay, global, Americas, Asia Pacific, EMEA. So overall, it's roughly about 100,000 to 150,000, right? This is US dollar. Everything is in US dollar. Now, if you look at global, it's roughly about 150,000. America's slightly higher, which is a good thing to know. 150 to about 180. And Asia Pacific is the lowest, roughly almost 100,000. And EMEA is somewhere in between, roughly 120,000, 130,000. So that's the first thing we realize. It's the zones. America's probably pay the highest. The next thing we want to know is this also tells you information by firm size. So we often get asked a lot of times is should I work for a smaller company or should I work for a larger company? Would there be a difference in pay? Well, let's take a look. So very interesting in Americas and global, mostly affected by the population in Americas because that's where over 60% of the respondents, right? So very interestingly, you see 50 to 249 employees, right? Those are employees. That's how they measure firm size. 50 to 249 employees, you get the highest pay, right? Which is being here is probably 185,000, somewhere around there. Much higher than any of the other categories you get. So it's not necessarily the smallest company, it's not necessarily the largest company. It's about somewhere. You want to find the sweet spot, which is 50 to 250. They get paid the highest. Why is that? Let's take a look. Let's think about that. So one, because it's large enough to have money. It's not large enough to produce that profitability, have that economies of scale. But at the same time, it's not super large where individual contribution is very hard to be seen and be rewarded. So 50 to 250, your contribution, your efforts are still going to be seen. You can still make sure when people see, oh, this is something done by this person, and then you get rewarded by that. So maybe next time you find a job, 50 to 249 is the company to go. Okay. We also talk about this median. Some people might think, what's median? Let's have a little refresher. This is also in the CFA Level 1 content, by the way. So if it's a normal distribution, you have the median, which is in the middle, right? You have 50% of the population on the right earning more income, 50% earning less income. That's median. Mean is the average, add everything in total, and you divide it by the number of people. Mode is the most frequently occurred numbers. So normal distribution, all those three numbers should align up. But income is often right skew, which means less people earn a lot of money and most people earn less than the median. So if you look at median, I shouldn't say most people earn less than. I'm saying the most frequently get paid number is probably the mode, which is usually less than median if you follow this chart. Median means 50% of people pay less than this, 50% pay more than this. So mean you will actually get a higher number. So bear that in mind. So if in our next episode, we're going to look at some mean numbers, some averages. So those numbers tend to be much, much higher than median because it gets dragged up by those people who earn a lot of money. So this is a right skew. So they use median, which is kind of, it gives you more information. It's probably a better representation than mean, which is skewed to the right. Okay, now let's talk about the last one, which is education going to affect the total compensation? Now, the good answer, the answer you probably want to hear is no, it doesn't have a significant impact. So let's take a look at this chart. The little light blue bar is the number of people participated. So total 150,000, 15,000 participated. Over half, almost 2/3, right, about 9,000 something have bachelors, followed by masters, about 3,000 something people. And MBA is about 2,000 something people, and PhD very, very less, probably just a few hundred people. Now you can see in total they earn about, now let's look at the dark blue bar, which is salary, roughly about 120,000 to 180,000. Bachelors earn somewhere in the middle, 150,000. And it's actually higher than masters will earn. Masters median is about 120, 125K, something like that. So by being a bachelor, you actually earn more than masters. So it doesn't have a significant impact. Your education level doesn't affect your income that much. PhD earns a little bit more than bachelor, which is about maybe 160,000 compared to 150,000. MBA earned the most, 180,000. But you have to bear in mind, this MBA, are they earning more because of the MBA education? Or is it because people tend to take MBA after 5-10 years of work experience? Is it because of their education or because of their seniority and years in this industry? But overall, there's no significance in the level of education to your total compensation. But there's some interesting data. If you want to become a CIO, you probably want to take the MBA. CIO means Chief Investment Officer. Because roughly about 25% of CIO have MBA. And if you want to become economists or regulators, you probably want to do a master's degree because 40% of economists and regulators hold a master's degree. So you can see different education and further education, different degrees you will get will probably gives you a different career path into what kind of position, what kind of industry you want to go into. Okay, lastly, let's look at highest education level by gender. So is there a difference between female and male? So overall, there are more male respondents. So very likely there are more male CFAs than female. In our next episode, we'll also talk about how the CFA for females have grown over time. And also we'll look at the differences between genders, right? Is male getting paid more than females? Is there a difference? And what about the salary growth? Does salary really grow over time? And what's the difference between general market salary growth and salary growth or compensation growth for CFA charter holders? What about female and male? We'll all talk about that in our next episode. So overall, it's kind of similar. MBA 15%, 15%. The main difference is in masters. Female have 29% in masters. Male have about 21% in masters. So you can see probably females like to do those further education, like to get a master's, right? They like doing more education. And males, they probably just say, oh, this is good enough. I'm good. I'm good at a bachelor's degree. So that gives you some insights as well. Okay, that's it for today, guys. Hopefully you learned more about CFA, their compensation structure, different type of job functions, industries, etc. In our next episode, we'll delve deeper into. We'll look at by compensation. Today we look at the median, but what about the average? What about top 10%? What about top 25%? What's the split between salary and variable income? So we're talking about bonuses, for example. We'll also look into other insights relating to job functions and CFA jobs and compensation in general. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you'll get notification next time we publish our next episode. Okay, what's your thoughts, views, or ideas relating to CFA, their compensation and job functions? Make sure you leave comments below. If you have any questions or if you would like us to cover a certain subject, make sure you leave a comment as well. On our journey to financial freedom, we need to form some good habits. So why don't we start with the following 3 little habits? If you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and share with your friends and family who you probably talked about similar topics. Money so tasty, retire so early. Until next time, remember, you're freer than you think.